With a soft click of the lock, Schiller's therapy session with Gordon came to an end. The door swung open, revealing Bruce Wayne in the doorway. The air in the room froze. For a moment, the three men simply stared at each other, a tense silence fermenting under the dim lights of the consultation room. Schiller was the first to break the impasse. He leaned back in his chair, fingertips tapping lightly on his desk, his gaze as sharp as a scalpel. "Mr. Wayne, I recall us establishing that your consultation time for this week has been exhausted. Is it truly so difficult to make a simple phone call and confirm if my office is occupied?" A crack appeared in Bruce's carefully constructed facade. He hadn't expected to find Gordon here. He was certain Gordon knew his secret, yet the captain had never once set foot in Wayne Manor. The implication was clear. Gordon didn't trust Batman. The realization struck Bruce with a sliver of defeat. Gordon was a rare bastion of integrity in the GCPD, and that bastion regarded him with hostility. He understood then that Batman had to do more. He had to earn that trust. "It seems," Schiller's voice was slow and deliberate, yet held an undeniable authority, "that Providence itself wishes for us to have a talk. Since fate has conspired to bring the three of us together, why not be candid?" His gaze shifted between Gordon and Bruce, as if piercing through their every pretense. "We all know what happened that night. I am also aware that complete trust does not exist between us, but that is of no consequence." Schiller smiled, a look brimming with amusement. "A common objective is sufficient to forge a temporary alliance. For instance, sending my colleague, Dr. Jonathan Crane, the creator of the Fear Gastu, where he belongs." Gordon knew he was cornered. If this situation wasn't resolved, and the commissioner discovered he was secretly investigating Crane, he could well imagine the consequences. He took a deep breath, his brow furrowed. "The situation is far worse than you imagine. Our current police commissioner, Victor, was once accused of trafficking high-concentration sedatives. He walked away unscathed and even climbed ranks. The word is Sal Maroni is backing him, but no one has any proof. As for my direct superior, Lantaros, I've seen him at the Red Crows gang's private club with my own eyes. But these old foxes are too cunning. No one can get a hand on them." Schiller let out a soft sigh. He knew Gordon's description was a sanitized version of reality. The Gotham City Police Department was a sieve, thoroughly infiltrated by the mob. The cleanest cops were merely those who took the money and looked the other way. Schiller suddenly asked, "Do you know Harvey Bullock?" Gordon frowned, thinking for a moment. "You mean that fat guy from logistics, the one who's always smoking and smells of booze. What about him?" "I heard he attended the police academy in Star City," Schiller said, his voice calm, yet the words landed like a stone dropped into a still pond. "An old officer from Metropolis mentioned him to me. He said Harvey once aspired to be a good cop, but was met with retaliation for it. Since then, he has used a degenerate facade as camouflage, even proactively colluding with the mob, simply to find a protector." "You think he can be trusted?" Gordon's tone was thick with skepticism. Bruce cut in, his voice low and decisive. "You're fighting a lone battle in the GCPD. You have no chance. Without a single ally, you can't possibly take down your superior and the commissioner, let alone the mob behind them." Schiller picked up the thread, arranging the pieces for the psychological game ahead. "You can try approaching Harvey, but you don't have to lay all your cards on the table. I'm sure he's been following this case. If he is who the rumors say he is, he might be willing to help from the shadows. With one of you in the light and the other in the dark, you can at least create enough trouble for your superior." Gordon considered it. "I'll give it a try. As for your commissioner," Bruce looked at Gordon, his eyes resolute. "I'll investigate him using the other identity you're aware of." He had never intended to hide it. He knew that to get help from within the department, revealing his identity was a necessary bargaining chip. Then the mob. A dangerous curve formed on Schiller's lips. "Whether it's Sal Maroney or the Red Crows, I shall pay them a visit." Gordon and Bruce both turned to look at him. Gordon spoke hesitantly, his voice laced with concern. "Professor, Gotham's gangs are not like the others. They are true beasts, devoid of law or morality, a pack of bloodthirsty jackals." "Yes, which is precisely why I must go," Schiller interrupted, his tone as casual as if he were discussing afternoon tea. "After all, in 2 months, Gotham University will have its final exams. I won't have this much free time then." He glanced at Bruce, adding with pointed meaning, "You see, many students here would rather waste their days in a nightclub than spend an ounce of effort on their studies." Bruce rubbed his nose in embarrassment. Gordon looked him up and down, then spoke with the air of an elder. "I may not be much older than you, but I feel obligated to remind you. If you want to keep being that weirdo in spandex, you'd better tone down your private life. You've bedded half the beautiful women in Gotham. Can you guarantee that none of them are black widows?" Bruce gave a perfunctory reply. "Right. Thanks for the warning. I'll be careful." Bruce Wayne's playboy reputation was legendary. Even at 18, he possessed a stunning charm capable of captivating any woman. The gossip columns were never short of his exploits, the women in his photos in constant rotation. Schiller wasn't worried about him being assassinated by a mobster's mistress. He was more concerned about the state of Bruce's kidneys. Unfortunately, just as Bruce returned to Wayne Manor, his butler, Alfred, handed him a report. "Forgive my impertinence, Master Bruce," he said in his signature British accent, "but I have taken the liberty of canceling your appointment for this evening. Your last physical examination data was, to be frank, less than optimistic." Bruce froze, recalling the strange looks from Gordon and Schiller earlier. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "Help me cancel all of my evening appointments for this month." Alfred's movements paused for a fraction of a second, his expression growing subtle. "Master Bruce, you invited Miss Christine to dinner 2 months ago. Are you certain? You wish to cancel her invitation as well?" "Of course." Bruce waved a dismissive hand. "I don't have time to date any of them right now." Alfred's expression grew stranger still. He hesitated for a long moment before speaking in a low voice. "Master Bruce, should you have any changes in your orientation, I do hope you would inform your loyal butler at your earliest convenience." Bruce pressed a hand to his forehead, explaining wearily, "I have to be out investigating things for the next few nights." "Fine. Keep the appointment with Miss Christine. She is, as you know, quite charming." The moment Alfred left, Bruce's phone rang. The caller ID read Schiller. He answered. Schiller's voice was direct. "You have a date with Christine, the captain of the Nightingales football team's cheerleading squad." Bruce's heart skipped a beat. Could Schiller actually read minds? She was bragging to her friends about hooking the young Mr. Wayne, Schiller stated, his voice devoid of emotion, a pure recitation of fact. 2 days after she said that, she disappeared. Her friends reported it to the university, and Anna from Human Resources asked me to contact you. "I haven't gone on a date with her yet," Bruce clarified immediately. "Our dinner is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. You know my schedule has been rather full." "So her disappearance has nothing to do with you. That's odd." A hint of inquiry colored Schiller's tone. "Human Resources told me that Christine is very cautious and rarely leaves campus for no reason. She's about to graduate, yet she's vanished." Bruce was instantly on alert. Could it be related to Crane's case? Impossible. She's a beautiful socialite. Jonathan is a bookworm who holes up in his office all day. Their paths would never have crossed. Schiller's tone shifted as he issued a directive. "All right, Bruce, you have a new assignment. Find your future date, preferably before your appointment." "But The Nightingales are the face of Gotham University. The captain's disappearance is a huge blow to their morale. The National League playoffs are in 2 weeks. Schiller's voice carried an undeniable threat. "If you can't find her, I'm failing you." "Hey, Professor, you can't. Hello, hello." Bruce lowered the phone, exasperated. Only after calling the university himself did he learn that Christine's disappearance had already caused a considerable stir. With Jonathan's arrest happening concurrently, the university was overwhelmed, and Schiller, as the new professor, had been summarily roped in to help. And then Schiller had roped in Batman, a cautious, beautiful girl disappearing from the Gotham University campus. It was hard not to connect it to Jonathan Crane. As for Schiller's threat of failing him, Bruce couldn't care less. Aside from Schiller's psychology class, when had he ever cared about his grades? As he thought this, a detail snagged his attention. Christine had bragged to others about her upcoming date with him. Could that be connected to her disappearance? Hell's Kitchen, New York. On the patient bed in Schiller's psychology clinic, Matt Murdock, the daredevil, let out a suppressed scream. Schiller moved an alcohol-soaked cotton ball with his tweezers, his voice as cold as a surgical instrument. "There may not be many people on this street, but if you keep tensing your muscles like that, I won't be able to get this bullet out." He tossed the cotton ball into a bin, wiped the tweezers with an alcohol pad, and parted the wound on Daredevil's shoulder, the cold gleam of metal flashing under the light. "I'm going to have to cut the wound open a little wider. You have to give me an anesthetic." Matt's voice was hoarse with pain. "Or I'll go into shock." A superhero who's afraid of pain. It was impossible to tell if Schiller's tone was one of mockery or admiration. "I really don't know what to make of you. Not many people can injure me like this," Matt said through gritted teeth. "Kingpin found someone formidable this time." Schiller looked at Matt's pale face, his lips completely drained of color. Everyone's tolerance for pain was different, and Daredevil clearly belonged to the more sensitive category. For such a person to become a superhero was truly something to ponder. Superheroes sustain injuries, they bleed. No amount of willpower can grant immunity to pain. Perhaps, Schiller mused, it was in the crucible of enduring one unbearable agony after another that Batman had forged his shallow quest for revenge into a grander purpose. Only an abstract ideal like justice could sustain a person through countless nights of licking their wounds in solitude. Schiller set down the tweezers. "You're in luck, Matt. I have something that will help." He produced a small white bottle and handed it over. Matt felt the packaging, then brought it to his nose to smell it, and immediately cursed. "Damn it, where did you get this kind of painkiller? You addict." "Don't be ungrateful." Schiller's voice was unruffled. "This isn't the trash you find on the street. Its concentration is the highest available. Take it or give it back. This stuff is expensive." This bottle of pills was precisely what he had liberated from Jonathan Crane's laboratory. Matt eventually swallowed one. As he felt the tide of agony slowly recede, he said in a low voice, "God grant me a swift recovery, so I can turn around and punch you." "Don't speak of repaying kindness with malice so casually," Schiller replied, picking up his tools again, his calm voice echoing in the clinic. "In a place like Hell's Kitchen, Carrying a few pills for emergencies hardly counts as a crime. In Gotham, if a person's only vice was drug use, he was practically an angel. The thought crossed Schiller's mind as he watched the color slowly return to Matt's face. The scalpel was rock steady in his hand. As he cleaned the wound, he asked casually, "How did you manage to get cornered?" Matt's lips were tight, his voice raspy with pain. "The man Kingpin hired is no amateur. I took precautions, but this group, they call themselves the Hand, ninjas, they can lower their heartbeats to a nearly undetectable level. I couldn't hear them. Ah, damn it." Schiller used tweezers to extract a blood-streaked bullet. He turned it under the light, its cold reflection glinting in his eyes. "These ninjas of yours are certainly thorough." His tone was laced with a morbid curiosity. "They even engraved a cherry blossom pattern on the bullet." Seeing Matt's exhausted expression, Schiller called out, "Pikachu, get the bandages from my cabinet." A small, furry creature hopped onto the table, complaining in a tone of utter disgust. "I told you not to treat him in the bedroom. Do you have a fondness for the smell of blood? Hey, unlucky bastard, here's your bandage." Schiller caught the roll of bandages Pikachu tossed him and began to dress Matt's wound. Matt urged him, "You'd better hurry. I have to get out of here, now." "And bleed out in an alleyway," Schiller retorted without looking up. "They're onto me. Those ninjas have unique tracking methods. If they find this place, neither of us will get away." Urgency sharpened Matt's voice. He didn't want to involve this doctor who, despite his questionable character, had saved his life. Schiller cleaned his bloodied instruments with deliberate slowness. "They don't need any special tracking methods. You ran 2 blocks leaving a trail of blood so thick that if they can't find you." Before he could finish, a sharp whistle tore through the clinic's silence. Matt's extraordinary hearing instantly detected the danger. "Sure I can. Get down," he yelled. He was frantic. Judging by Schiller's steady breathing and footsteps, the man was an ordinary civilian. Against these lethal assassins, his chances of survival were 0. But the scream he expected never came. There was only a dull thump, as if the projectile had struck a resilient barrier. Schiller stood holding a long, handled black umbrella, its canopy vibrating slightly. An umbrella, he reflected, was a rather effective defensive tool, particularly adept at deflecting the impact of small projectiles. Within his telepathic range, only one mind besides Matt's was in turmoil. "Miss," Schiller said, addressing an empty, dark corner of the room, his voice clear and calm. "Since you hesitated for a full 3 minutes before deciding to act, why don't we sit down for a cup of coffee?" Without waiting for a reply, he continued, "You're certainly merciful with an old flame. I've never seen anyone place a bullet so precisely in the least fatal gap between the scapulae. Since you're here, why not show yourself?" A faint, cold snort hung in the air, and then the murderous presence vanished, receding as quickly as it had appeared. Matt looked utterly bewildered, struggling to ask, "What? What old flame?" Schiller shook his head and closed the umbrella, his tone like that of a teacher correcting a slow student. "Haven't you realized, if this assassin had the ability to shoot you without you ever sensing her, why didn't she simply aim for your heart, or your head?" "You mean, she wasn't aiming to kill?" "Not by a long shot." Matt's mind went blank. He hadn't realized. The assassin who had shown him mercy was his ex-girl-friend Electra. Schiller was well aware of the conflict raging within her. She still had feelings for Matt, yet she was bound by her mission. She wanted to see him, but was afraid to. The moment Schiller had exposed her, she had fled. Soon, Daredevil, caught between pain and anxiety, drifted into a deep sleep. Schiller pulled down the clinic's rolling steel door, locked it, and checked the windows. He stood by the bed, his gaze fixed on the New York night sky. A brilliant arc of light tore through the darkness. Countless couples mistook it for a shooting star and made their wishes. But Schiller knew it was Tony Stark's Iron Man armor. The people of Hell's Kitchen never had the luxury of wishing on stars. But Schiller took out his phone and dialed Stark's number. The moment the call connected, he said bluntly, "Does Miss Potts know you'd rather tear around the sky in a tin can than go home to her?" In the next second, under the watchful eyes of innumerable lovers, the dazzling shooting star seemed to lose power and plummeted toward the ground. A few moments later, on the roof of Schiller's clinic, Stark stood in a still, smoking Mark V armor, complaining loudly, "I really should add you to my block list." Schiller handed him a cigarette and lit one for himself, slowly exhaling a ring of smoke. A middle-aged man, awake in the dead of night, tracing such a melancholy trajectory across the sky. If it isn't trouble with the wife, what else could it be? Stark sat on the edge of the roof and took the cigarette, remaining silent for a moment. "She's putting a little too much pressure on me. Honestly, I haven't really thought it through." Thought what through? Whether or not to marry Pepper? Stark choked on the smoke, coughing violently. "Marry? Aren't you skipping a few rather important steps?" "Ah, right. In the eyes of a playboy like you, there is indeed another important step." "Don't say it like that. Pepper isn't like those other women. The question is, in her eyes, are you any different from other men?" Schiller's words were a scalpel, cutting to the core. Before Stark could object, he added, "But I imagine you're much the same. After all, you spend less time with her than your head of security does." "Then I'll fire him when I get back," Stark said resentfully, clearly dodging the issue. After a while, Stark touched his own cheek, asking with a conflicted expression, "Can you really raid minds? If I said I could, would you believe me? Don't ask questions you already have an answer for." "I wish you could," Stark said. "Then you could tell me what Pepper is actually thinking." For all his technological genius, Tony Stark possessed a remarkably sensitive and emotional mind, one he was constantly tying into impossible knots. Schiller changed the subject. "How's that kid in the red and blue spandex doing? I've heard you complain about him." "Oh, right. Some kid in an unbelievably ugly suit, jumping around the city like a flea," Stark said with disdain. "Jarvis's analysis suggests he isn't even an adult. I'm thinking of catching him and throwing him back home." A slight smile touched Schiller's lips. "I might have a lead for you. Care to hear it?" Stark scoffed. Schiller continued his analysis, unhurried. "I've seen him a few times on the edge of Hell's Kitchen. He didn't dare come in. I noticed a high school emblem on his light, blue pants, from somewhere in Queens. It's clear he doesn't have money for a decent suit, so his family's financial situation probably isn't great. That rules out the ridiculously expensive private schools. He's most likely a student at Midtown High, or maybe Forest Hills." "Forest Hills is a boarding school," Stark cut in, following the logic. "A student running around like that would have his legs broken by the administration. Midtown High, on the other hand, is much more lax. Judging by his build, he's probably a freshman or a sophomore." "A little punk," Stark concluded, a note of adult arrogance in his voice. "Probably cobbled together some new toy and couldn't wait to show it off." So, Schiller looked at him, a playful glint in his eye. "Are you planning to teach him how cruel the adult world can be?" "Of course." More importantly, Stark stood up, the armor's silhouette stark and hard in the moonlight. New York City is not his playground. Peter Parker had been having the time of his life. Ever since that spider bite, he had gained incredible superpowers. For a high school student, it was a gift from the heavens. But trouble followed. The mysterious doctor who had been chatting with him online had arranged a health checkup for his family. The results showed a shadow on his Uncle Ben's lung. Anyone with a shred of sense knew what that phrase implied: cancer or a tumor. The doctor recommended a full pulmonary examination, but the cost was an astronomical figure for the Parkers. After paying Peter's tuition, Uncle Ben and Aunt May's salaries left almost nothing. A sharp resentment grew in Peter's heart. Thompson, the boy who always bullied him at school, wore sneakers that cost over $1,000, while his family couldn't even afford a few hundred for a medical exam. But now he had superpowers. What were they for, if not to make money? The quickest way was the underground fighting circuit. Relying on his absolute physical dominance, Peter quickly made a name for himself, adopting the moniker Spider-Man. In just a few days, he had earned tens of thousands of dollars, enough to cover his uncle's medical expenses. Meanwhile, after several days of recovery at Schiller's clinic, Daredevil's injuries had greatly improved. He decided it was time to leave. He needed to let Kingpin know that one failed assassination wouldn't stop him. His target was one of Kingpin's enterprises, the underground fight club on Beale Street. Matt lay low and observed for a few days, and soon heard the name Spider-Man. He knew the kid's lucky streak couldn't last. One day, the fight club owner approached Peter, wanting him to throw a match. For the house, it was a surefire way to make a profit. Peter refused. His string of victories had filled the adolescent boy with pride. He couldn't accept losing on purpose. In his naivete, he thought there was nothing they could do to him. All of this was witnessed by Matt, disguised as a drunkard in the audience. The next day, Matt was at the fight again. When Peter entered the ring, he was met with the same thunderous cheers. His opponent was a powerful boxer with a sly smile on his face. When the match began, Peter felt something was wrong. His opponent kept dodging, trying to stall for time. Soon, a sharp pain shot through his abdomen. His legs grew weak, and his vision tunneled. In the moment his consciousness blurred, the boxer's heavy fist slammed into his face. Peter staggered back, dizzy and disoriented. His sense screamed a warning. His opponent's gloves were hiding lead weights. Peter ducked under a lethal blow, but the crowd erupted in boos. He could barely breathe as his opponent's fists rained down on him like hail. There were no rules here, no referee, only primitive violence. All he could do was curl up, protecting his head, feeling his organs shift with every blow. Finally, he collapsed to the mat and threw up. The crowd's cheers turned into piercing jeers and curses. A torrent of filth, words Peter had never heard in his life, was hurled at him like garbage. Just before he blacked out, he saw a red figure leap from the audience. A cane whistled through the air, striking his opponent precisely on the neck. The storm of blows finally stopped, but Peter couldn't hold on any longer and lost consciousness.